TD Bank says it plans to shut down a call center in Greater Moncton that it established with millions of dollars in subsidies from the government of New Brunswick. The Bay Street giant won't say how many workers will be affected by the closure because it's actively working to redeploy them, according to a spokesperson. But earlier this year, TD announced plans to reduce its total workforce by 2%. That's about 2,000 people worldwide. Is the closure of the call center in Dieppe part of the bank's overall workforce reduction plan? TD won't say. The story raises questions about financial assistance schemes that governments use to lure massively profitable companies like TD into the province. Former Premier Frank McKenna has been an executive with TD since 2006. In 2017, the provincial government announced the bank would open a facility expected to create up to 575 jobs over a 6-year period. TD ultimately set up shop at the site of a shuttered Sears department store. As part of the deal, the bank received a $6.8 million forgivable loan from Opportunities NB, a provincial crown corporation. TD eventually repaid $1.2 million of that loan, according to ONB. But it's unclear how many jobs were ultimately created with the other $5.6 million in public funds. TD also received $2.1 million from the Department of Post-Secondary Education for wage subsidies and $150,000 through a federal provincial grant program for training. And in 2018, ONB announced another $8.8 million forgivable loan to help TD establish a new finance operations center. TD's profits reached $3.34 billion in the third quarter of this year alone, and yet the province continues to subsidize its operations in New Brunswick. Last year, then Premier Blaine Higgs quietly issued an order in council giving TD a payroll subsidy worth $2.7 million over 4 years. The company will have until the end of 2027 to fulfill the terms of that agreement, according to ONB. As for the call center, it's expected to close in the spring. The news follows a major scandal in the United States where the bank pled guilty to multiple charges last year, including conspiracy to commit money laundering, resulting in more than $3 billion US in fines. It's unclear whether those penalties are directly related to the current job-slashing efforts, or whether it's just another example of banks rationalizing their operations to maximize profits. For more on this story, the NB Media Co-op spoke to Silas Jouerab, an economist and policy analyst with the nonprofit Canadians for Tax Fairness. Your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate for all the workers in New Brunswick there. Unfortunately, this is, I think, a pretty common pattern that we see these days. Of course, governments want to stimulate investment and create jobs. And over the past, especially last 20 years or so, giving subsidies to corporations has been a principal way that they've tried to do that. But we've seen time after time that it hasn't really been effective. And Laurent Carbonneau has some interesting numbers suggesting that businesses received over $30 billion in subsidies in 2023, 2024. And despite all this, public money going to private corporations, corporate and actually investment is lower today than it was a decade ago. So really, we're not seeing, a quote unquote return on investment for the public money that is going to private corporations, like in this example, to TD Bank.
I guess one thing that occurs to me is there's kind of a question of transparency here, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%. It's really unfortunate that a lot of these deals that our governments who are supposed to be representing us strike with these private corporations are not public, right? So we can't see actually the terms of these deals, what the corporations need to do in order to get this public money that we're giving to them. So yeah, we definitely think that if governments do have to strike these deals should be public so we can evaluate them and decide whether democratically this is what we want to be doing with our money. And I think that the public would want to ensure that strict conditions are attached to these types of loans, forgivable or not, right? If we're going to be giving our public money to private corporations, we want them to guarantee us that they're going to be creating long-term sustainable jobs, not come in for 5 years and then pick up and leave, right? And we'd want those jobs to be creating those jobs to pay living wages and have excellent working conditions, right? That should be the bare minimum if we're going to be just giving money away to corporations. So, um, yeah, I would definitely love to see deals like this being made public and having much stricter conditions so that they can't just get up and walk away after a few years.
Now, Opportunities New Brunswick says over 6 years, the investment in the call center created $67.8 million in total payroll for the province and contributed an estimated $153.5 million to New Brunswick's GDP. And they went on to say in the statement, without partnerships like this, many of these high value roles and associated economic activity would likely have occurred in other jurisdictions. So it kind of makes it sound like they've got us over a barrel in a sense that if we don't accept these terms from these corporations, massively profitable corporations, no less like TD, then we just simply would not get jobs from them. There would not be investment activity. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things there. I mean, first, um, when we see these claims to these big GDP figures, for example, we have to think about what might have we have done with that money if we didn't invest it in TD Bank, right? It's not like that $7 or $9 million of public funds would not have existed. Right, there's a lot of other things that we could have done with that money, right? We could have put it in New Crown Corporation and used it to create public sector jobs in areas that we badly need investment in right now, like climate retrofitting and building a massive new electricity grid, right? So those numbers are not existing in a vacuum. This is a strategy that corporations always use, right? They pit different jurisdictions against each other, right? And it creates this kind of race to the bottom on tax policy for which municipality or which province can give us the most money. And so, this is a difficult problem. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to solve, but we need, I think, municipalities and provinces to work together, right, and to set standards and to say, this is, none of us are going to go below X corporate tax rate. None of us are going to give these giant subsidies away so that they can't pit municipalities and governments against each other because the public is inevitably going to lose out in that case if we allow them to keep pitting us against each other.
And just a few minutes ago, I was talking to a retired professor, University of New Brunswick professor Tom Workman, I mentioned the term corporate welfare. He objected to that, saying that it's a misleading term because it diverts attention away from what he called the real function of the state, which is in a capitalist state to encourage or allow for the optimization of profit of accumulation. Just any thoughts on that, on the idea of corporate welfare and the state?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, I think my probably first issue with that term, I suppose, would be the potential stigmatization aspect that it could provide. Kind of painting welfare in a negative light, which has often been used, of course, to stigmatize marginalized groups
Mm-hmm.
who might have to rely on public funding of one sort or another. Um, and I think in terms of what is the role of the state in the capitalist economy, yeah, I mean, certainly the capitalist state does see its role to some extent to be to maintain profitability, but I also think that it's contested, and workers and the public have some, albeit limited, influence over the state and what it's going to do. And so we need to continue organizing and continue pushing the state to not just act in order to maximize profits of private corporations, but to act in our benefit as well.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap up here, Silas?
Yeah, just I guess I'll just note that, yeah, I mean, as you said, the TD Bank is a massive, extremely profitable corporation. It raked in over $10.8 billion in profits in 2024. So, this $9 million of funding from the government is a drop in the bucket for them, right? They really do not need that public money. And there's really no evidence that this type of um, uh, corporate welfare or reducing corporate taxes or providing corporate subsidies actually results in higher investment on an aggregate level, right? Again, it can shift investment from kind of one municipality to another, but overall, it's not increasing the amount that businesses are investing. So we really need to find other strategies in order to to get the job creation that we want to see.
Are there other alternatives? You mentioned the need to kind of organize and, for example, for more public investment to occur. Any other thoughts on alternatives to this strategy?
Yeah, I think we need to think seriously about having a real, industrial policy, a national industrial strategy again, right? And we need to think about, where are our priorities for investment in infrastructure and stuff like that, and direct public funding and public resources to those areas in order to create the economy that works for everyone and not just the profitability of some big corporations. And that's going to need a bit of a shift in how we think about the role of the public sector, but it's not new. It's been done before. We've done it before in Canada. We've had a lot more public control over investments and over the use of our natural resources, and we need to get back to that if we're going to get the average Canadian and raise their living standards and stop the affordability crisis.
Well, thank you. I've been speaking to Silas Schwereb, economist and policy analyst with Canadians for Tax Fairness. Thanks for joining the NB Media Co-op today.
Thanks. Take care.